All right, so it says excellent connection. All right, I'm going to press the go live button. Here we go, everybody. All right, everybody, welcome to yet another episode of the Break the Rules live stream. I am your humble host, Lev Polyakov, all the way live here for a very special stream talking about the Book of Revelation. Ariel Pink is back with us once again, the great and powerful Ariel Pink, along with Neil, Gnostic Informant, back with a fresh new look. And for the very first time, we have Ammon. Ammon, thank you so much, brother, for coming in today. You are a master in the Greek language. You're going to be breaking a lot of this stuff down. And we're going to have the great Nina Paley coming in a little bit later as well. I love Nina. Everybody loves Nina, or Niners as I like to call her now. And she did Apocalypse Animated, which you could see in the screen over here. It is a animated rendition of the various passages from the Book of Revelation. She illustrated the beast, she illustrated the lamb, she illustrated all kinds of stuff. And guys, if you want to support Break the Rules, which brings everybody together, what you have to do is you have to smash that subscribe button, smash the like button, click the bell, and all that good stuff. So we are going to go right into it, starting with the main man himself, Ariel. Ariel, what attracted you to the Book of Revelation, to think about the end times, whether we are or are not in the end times right now? I mean, just today is the 24th anniversary of the Matrix movie. It's the day where they announced the arrest of Donald Trump. There's a lot of crazy stuff that's happening in the world right now. So what do you personally make of that and your own connection to the Book of Revelation? Go for it.
Well, I mean, I just think that I'll start by saying that I am not an expert on any of these things. I can't even quote scripture or anything like that. So, and I mean, same goes for politics and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm really just, I've got a surface read on everything. I'm like my own sort of, I just kind of take what's on the surface and I kind of like distill it, and it needs to make sense to me somehow. So, but there are a lot of coincidences, or there's just it seems like it would be kind of odd for there to be such confluence of so many things. I mean, just on a cultural level, it has nothing to do with the Bible per se, but like I mean, when you think about like what generation we are in, what they call us, or Generation X, generation, millennials, and all this kind of stuff. I mean, when I was born, I mean, I'm a Generation X, just barely, and it just seems like, how many more generations are there? I mean, there's Generation X, Y, Z. I mean,
Well, now it's Generation Alpha, and it's funny because Jesus is known as the Alpha and the Omega.
right. So I mean, it just seems like there's like a lot of weird kind of confluences, and it seems like there's it'd be if I was some sort of Sherlock Holmes, I might sort of say there's too many coincidences, maybe.
Do you guys feel the same way?
Well, the thing about Revelation is it's symbolism. It's deep symbolism, and if you were telling this in the context of the first century, it's dated probably in the 90s, maybe late 90s, early second century, maybe. The imagery that is being casted out, if you will, it would be very familiar to the people in that time. For example, like, the women clothed with the sun, with the crown with 12 stars, standing on the moon, giving birth to a child. That imagery would be very familiar to people in the Orphic religion. That is, in some of the earliest writers on the Sibylline oracles in Middle Ages comment on this, is that this is taking from imagery of Venus Urania, the heavenly Venus, the queen of heaven, giving birth to Lucifer, the morning star. Later on in the book, Jesus says that he is the morning star. So what happens with Christianity a lot early on is they sort of take images and symbols from the Old Testament, but also the Greco-Roman mystery religion world, and they repurpose it and polemicize it and make it
Right.
Christianized. So this is what's going on here in Revelation. A lot of the symbolism, because of it's so vague and dreamlike, and it could be reinterpreted. And so in the year 1000, I'll give you an example. The year 1000, Pope Sylvester II, who was the Pope at the time, decided that because Revelation says at the end of 1,000-year reign, Satan will be unchained and come out. He decided that this was the end times. The end times is now. Everybody get ready. Obviously, it didn't happen. So what happens is throughout the ages, these texts keep getting reinterpreted because so that's the power of symbolism.
Yeah, well, that's I can totally see that. I mean, I think in many ways it's the way that I see it is that it probably, I think that like it was supposed to happen a lot sooner, and for whatever reason, when we started, I guess it's the Roman calendar, but I mean, for all intents and purposes, it really just sort of stamps. I mean, what happened 2023 years ago? It's like, okay.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The Christians believe that the end times was nearer than we think.
Right. So
Jesus was like, some of you won't even taste death before I return.
So I kind of see it as like, when I think about like, 2023, what is the significance of that? And for a secular interpretation and that kind of thing. And what it means to me is more or less that somebody has stalled the end times by essentially demarcating the Christian Roman calendar or whatever, and it really so the book of Revelation sort of happens in this twilight after end times in a weird way. It's sort of like I mean, it's a sort of like a dream, right? So it's sort of the way it sort of it rolls out. It could span eons or whatever, but basically, I think that like the Messiah returning the rapture and all that kind of stuff. I think that has been forestalled a little bit, and or I don't know if that's the word, forestalled, but it's been basically like delayed,
yeah.
But by us actually kind of like by us entering into a Christian age where basically we all have come to learn about the significance of Jesus at some point over the past 2023 years, and so and we do that just literally by being born and into whatever religion we were born into. But I mean, Christianity has made its rounds now around the planet several times, and so there actually is an opportunity to deny God. I mean, on a very conscious level, which is what's necessary to actually make it happen, because to make revelation happen, because there has to be a conscientious denial of God. I mean, of even there has to be a refusal. There has to be a denial, and there has to be for the when I see the one world religion, or I don't know what the exact term they used was, but there was going to be the Antichrist or some sort of power figure was going to sort of unite the planet, and under one. The world wars would end. The nation between nations would end. There'd be one. It would all fall under one power structure.
Yeah.
And then only then could they basically raise a generation that where they wouldn't even know the word God would not be introduced. So I mean, so if we were never actually raised with the word God, I don't. It's doubtful to me that you'd be able to convince people that that there was such a thing, or that you couldn't point to anything. You could easily kind of do, like, you not even have it in our lexicon, because there's nothing that really identifies it as such. And so for the people that really are against God, I think it's of a priority. It's a priority for them to usher in a generation as soon as possible that they can re-educate, so I guess, and sort of wipe the slate clean, and never introduce the word God into their awareness. And I think that, like, a year zero kind of situation is really definitely like what is necessary for that, because
let me just jump in for a few things.
Wait, one thing.
All right.
Because if they don't, the time thing, the 2023 is really important. It's important to get out of this time. So the year zero situation is because as long as we're in the Roman calendar, as long as we're keeping track of how long it's been since Jesus was around, there's no way that we can actually forget about Jesus. There's no way that people they can't rewrite history unless they start over with a different timeline, basically.
Like the French Revolution type of thing.
Like a Khmer Rouge type situation.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be, the time would be like, we're in the 12th year of Augustus or the 7th year of Tiberius, and that's how they would keep time. And then the church obviously is in control of academia for a period of time. I think it's 5th or 6th century, they decided to start over and make the date for when they thought Jesus was birthday. Anyways, but I wanted to touch on something, because this whole triggering the end times thing, like, people need to reject God for it to happen. To put it in context, because this is something that's been popping up throughout history forever. The 13th century, for example, fresh off all of these crusades, failed crusades, Christendom is losing to Islam. Mongols are sweeping from the east. That's Gog and Magog. That the end times is triggered at this. People were convinced. People were convinced in the year 1260 that this was the end of the world. There's no way they were going to keep going. They lost Jerusalem. Holy world, the holy city's gone. The infidels have it. They called Muhammad the Baphomet, the Antichrist. Everything was in place, and yet the world keeps turning, and all these symbols keep getting reimagined and reapplied, basically, to whatever. The symbols just plug and play depending on what time you're in. Some people say the vaccine is the mark of the beast.
Right. No, I got it. I mean, and there's something about Christianity maybe not even just the Abrahamic religions that it's like sort of like hardwired or built into it that we have to be looking ahead towards some sort of apocalyptic calamity, and I think that sort of gives us our predictive edge and maybe our paranoia in a sense too, just in terms of the way that, like, just godless Americans even try to deal with the Cold War and whatever, and shoot first and ask questions later. I mean, I don't.
You mentioned the word God as like this concept, and I want to throw it over to Ammon, because that word theos is where the Greek word God comes from. Theology, the study of God, right? That comes from the Greek, and I want to maybe if Ammon can touch on the etymology of this word, what it originally meant to people in the first, like.
And before Ammon, little Saint James in the comments over here says Ariel means lion of God, which is true. Ari means lion, and El is another word for God. So there we
Yeah.
go, Ariel. And by the way, guys, if you
he's not
want to.
lying.
Oh man, dad jokes right there, perfect. And by the way, guys, be sure to sneed those super chats if you want to ask any questions to Ariel and everybody else. But that was a special one. I wanted to let that one go for free. So Ammon, you are on.
I want to answer the question that Ariel and Neil got
Putting it in now for me.
got to answer, and you got me. Everything's
I got
okay.
you. Yeah.
Okay. I want to answer their question. They were both looking at the lady and the dragon, and from my perspective, when I look, I see a lot of sex. I see a lot of sex, and I see a lot of drugs, and I see orgy. People don't see it, but in that chapter in the Greek is the word orgy. And it is the dragon who is doing that act upon the woman. Right? He's the one who wants to eat those children. Right? He wants to consume that. If I were to tell you this is ritual, if I just took a pen that tagged everything linguistically that was related to or used in Orphic mystery religion, right? If I just did that with a pen in the apocalypse, 90% of the material would be covered. Okay, this is ritual. When she comes out, I know you guys are gonna want to say hallelujah, hallelujah. But when you say hallelujah, you are saying nothing Semitic. You are saying Pulaskian, Ololudzo. It's that cry that she makes. It's that cry that she makes in the Grove of Mars, right? That's where we are. Grove of Mars giving birth. We're talking old Scythian. We're talking 1,000 years before any of the old Hebrew ever even could have theoretically existed, right? And we're talking about a Bronze Age cult. The language of that Bronze Age cult is all over this text, all over it. And in that text, you see, for example, she's clothed with the sun. Do you know there's a specific line of ancient priests who are clothed in the sun? Did you know that? They called one of them the granddaughter of the sun. That was her official title. They also called her Lady Babylon.
Yep.
And she was building a linguistic tower within the rite, within the rite itself, right? So when you talk about Revelation 12, yeah, and you talk
She's
about
pulled by a chariot of serpents, dragons.
you see who the and you all of a sudden you realize you start looking at the language and it's all ritual cult language. There's a lot of sex there, there's a lot of drugs there, and it is her communion. People are always shocked. They're like, people believe the fairy tale or they see the reality, and the historical reality of it is that they are using polypharmaceutical substances to the point that the communion is the ejaculation of what they call the sotera, right? She who is the savior. Again, this is centuries before Christianity comes out. All of it. You're going to say, what about the Moses and the serpent? All of it is part of Bronze Age oracular cult. When Moses has his tabernacle, his temple, his curtains, his tent set up, and they've got all the fumigations going on, it's the voice of God that he is bringing. It is still the oracular cult, right? So there's a lot of things going on that you don't, that with the text that we
No.
because our viewer can't really see it.
And you there?
Yeah,
Hello?
Ariel. Hello.
Yeah,
You're cutting out because I think
yeah,
you're
sorry
outside.
about that. Sorry, it just keeps on cutting.
Well,
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
All right, I
can
hear
me
you now. Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so yeah, no, I hear all that. That's the, I mean, one is inclined to be sort of there's it's for me it's less about the the actual significance of the things, but because they are somewhat interchangeable and subject to they're a little bit ambiguous, and it's also subject to interpretation, and it's all very very much a dark art in a sense. It's all very much ritualistic. It's all to me, prayer is akin to invocation. It's even just speaking as we do. What are we doing? Where the words precede us? We were born, and we have to learn the words. The words were around a lot long before we were born. So we are subject to their whim. Whatever kind of spirit is sort of dictating the words course through the ages. That actually, it is a sort of there are other energies that are using us as vessels to sort of play out something for them, and but I think that's the real message that I take from the Christian Bible is one of simplicity and economy of sorts. It's like it's a way to sort of, it's a grounding rod to sort of get at the essence of something and have it sort of ground you, so that you're not like an antenna for 1,000 different spirits that are basically vying for your attention, and just they're not, if you have some sort of grounding, or some sort of like anchor to the world, or to some sort of code, then maybe you can be you don't risk being completely dominated by these things. And I don't, and I mean, at the same time, there's the will, and then there's people's individual wills, and of course there's we're all gods in a certain sense. I mean, we all have that, but I think that, like, with 6 billion other gods on the planet, it doesn't make our superpowers very very advantageous. So there's some sort of, there's got to be some sort of I don't know. For me, it's a lot simpler. But I'm not trying to debunk anything, and I'm not trying to scaremonger either. I mean, I'm just.
So is it more like religion as a vehicle, like Mahayana Buddhism? Mahayana means great vehicle. It's a vehicle that people can get into in order to get to a certain destination without worried about being hijacked by some other god that's gonna, take your business away and like do certain things to you that you don't want to be done to you. Like, in that sense, I could see Christianity working really well.
Well, I mean, for instance, like there's the very very well researched and vast world of science, for instance, which I don't think really goes one way or the other about with debunking anything with regards to God or anything like that. I don't think it has anything to do with it. I mean, it's like just like a totally separate question. I mean, it's whether God exists or not is not even the question. It's not like it's irrelevant. It's God is not like necessarily a thing that Jesus, whether Jesus is the way, or is it, I mean, like whether he happened, whether he existed, whether or not, it's really not the point. It's really just about like it's all about humans. It's all about what what it means to humans, and the significance that it has nothing to do with facts or science. So I think it's very, in fact, I think that like the science actually came, it sort of happened alongside Christianity in many ways, and and you know, I mean, it's been.
I'd say that more about what the Greeks did. The Greeks,
Yeah, it's exactly. It's more
their
about what the
religion
Greeks did.
and their theology went side by side with philosophy and science. And
Right. So,
out of the Greeks, we get a lot of a lot of progress with science and medicine, the drugs, the Antikythera mechanism, which was an analog computer that they found in the middle of the sea from the 1st century BCE. I want to say something real quick though about, because it even though it is symbolism and it can be reinterpreted and people do reapply these things, the author was speaking on something literal here, and he reveals this in chapter 17, where he says, here is a clue for one who has wisdom. And then he begins to reveal the mystery. He says that the 7 kings represent the 7 heads, and 5 have already fallen, 1 still lives, 1 is yet to come, and out of that is 2 beasts, right? And there's a way that we can reinterpret this, because when you look at the 7 kings, Augustus was the first real Roman emperor to have full monarchy control, right? And if you count if you go from Augustus and you count up, you get Augustus, you get Tiberius, you get Caligula, you get Claudius, and then Nero. And then you're like, okay, so that's Nero's the 5th one. And then the 6th one, that brings us to, and you're thinking, okay, is it Otho? Is it Galba? Is it Vitel? But I think, here's what I
forget. Yeah.
I think that during those civil war periods, during the year of the 4 emperors, the author Revelation wasn't counting. Those are all rebel kings. He's going straight from Nero to Vespasian. So Vespasian, who was the one reigning at the time, the one to come, who's going to be here for a short while, is his son Titus, who only reigns for 2 years. And then you get the next coming of Nero, which people thought was Domitian. And so you have to realize that the second beast, whose number is 666, is Nero. Once you realize that, you were talking, okay, he's talking about historical events that already happened. The 7-year war is divided up into two parts, 3.5, 3.5. If you look, Nero caused a war on Jerusalem after he raided the temple in 66. And then in 70, the Jerusalem temple is destroyed. That's 3.5 years. They settle down for a second. But then there's another revolt in Masada in 73. So there's your 3.5, there's your 3.5. The whole 7-year war is a war against Roman Jerusalem, Judean Roman wars. And so he is speaking on historical events. Now, that's not to say that someone can't say, well, it happened then, but you can still reapply the text to future events. Fine. Freedom is all. Anyone can say. I get that. That's the nature of these prophetic texts, is that they, like Daniel. Daniel once was about Alexander the Great, and then later on it became about the Romans. People see that about Daniel, just like that Revelation. So, but I guess my point is, like, the author of Revelation is writing about stuff. Lady Babylon, in my opinion, and Satan, the great serpent, I think what he's doing is he's taking paganism and he's putting it as an incarnate deity. So paganism incarnate, and this is my takeaway from my research in the last couple of years, the concept of Satan in the Christianity, not in Judaism, the concept of Satan in Christianity is paganism incarnate. Because in Judaism, he's just an opposer.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I think is going on
Right.
here. And I think Revelation really kicks that off here.
Ariel, go on.
Well, I mean, it mirrors, like, you know, there's the whole. Oh, sorry.
No, go on.
Everything's like freezing.
You got to find a good place to sit where there's not going to be any freezing.
Man.
Yeah, that would be the optimal thing. And while we're waiting for Ariel to get back into connection, I want to say the animation that you guys are seeing on the screen, that's from apocalypseanimated.com by Nina Paley, who's going to be joining us in the second hour. And be sure to smash that subscribe button. I see a lot of new people joining us here. Be sure to like, and clicking the bell is extremely important. Anyway, Ariel, I think the connection is better. I just want to make sure you're in a good spot where it's not going to change around. No, it's still bad.
I'm trying to
Yeah,
stay in one spot. It's just
yeah, but if the spot that you're staying in is not that good reception-wise,
Try
then
leaving and coming back
Yeah.
in. Refresh it.
yeah. Anyway, we're gonna figure this out. But while we're figuring this out, Ammon, any thoughts on what was discussed right now?
Yeah, I think it's important that we not leave out the naked boy that was with Jesus when he was arrested at 4 a.m. I think that element's important. I look through the other end that Ariel and I are looking opposite ends. He's talking about interpretation. I go full out science, and I'm like, I don't want any interpretation. I don't want any arguments. I don't want any ideas. I just want what that text says. I was trained as a classical philologist. And they give you the understanding that you're guarding these sources, these resources. And so I just want to look at the text, and when I see the naked boy with Jesus, and it fits with the title that he gives himself, he calls himself a trafficker of children. And this is in the Bible, right? I don't care about mythicism. I don't care about your religious views. I don't care about any of the political side. All I want to know is, what is that in that text when Jesus?
Wait, what's the passage?
Mark 14.
Arrested?
Mark
14, 51 and 52, right?
When Jesus gets arrested, and when Judas is approaching him with a little boy, this is in the text. By the way, Mark's the first gospel. Mark's the oldest gospel. In the text, it says that a little boy ran away naked. No one ever talks about it. You never hear about it in church. Why is that there? And so I think Ammon loves to talk about this, but I understand why. It's like, why does nobody ever talk about this?
Well, first search result says young man. It doesn't say boy necessarily.
It's written in Greek, not English.
Right,
so.
right.
Okay.
Let me just say
Okay.
one thing, Lev. Let me just say one thing. Raise your hand if you read ancient Greek. Okay.
You're teaching me
all right,
something like this.
he got that.
Okay, wait.
He's my teacher.
Wait. So I'm going to tell you now. I'm going to put my name on the line there, and I'm going to tell you now what I tell my seminarian students. You have never read the Bible. You have never read the New Testament. You have never read it. They come in and they're so mad, and by the end of 3 semesters, they are proud of the fact that now they have actually worked it. I'm talking about science here. We got to go back to that text. It says that naked Neaniskos, which is a kid, it says that he's got a syndon, right, on his gumnos, on his nakedness, which the Greeks use that to refer to your genitalia, and the syndon on the medical side is a wrap that you impregnate with a drug in order to induce a desired effect. The Medusae are doing this. They're making lateral slits in their skin, and they're taking these drug-penetrated linen wraps, and they'll rub the wrap as it's on the wound, and they'll take that drug in. And, that's what they use on their arrows, right? And that's why they turn you to stone. There's a lot of pharmacology here that people are missing. I want to know what that naked kid is doing there with him, regardless of the mythicism.
Maybe he's on bath salts or something like that.
Yeah.
I love this comment, by the way. We have a comment from this dude, Stone White, who says, King James was the original. Quit lying. There's an interesting legend about King James being written by William Shakespeare, but that's like a whole other rabbit hole. That
Shakespeare was a part of the King's court when the King James was written. He was a part of that court, so he was living where it was done.
Do you know Ammon? Do you know Hebrew as well? Do you read Hebrew?
No. I lived for a year in Israel when I was working at a dig at Tel Megiddo, and I learned a little bit of modern at the time just to help get by. But I don't step outside of my classical area.
Neil does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Neil reads Hebrew.
I can read it. I can read Hebrew. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to. I have to look stuff up. I can read the words. I was in Israel and I was reading science and stuff. I can read it. Yeah, but I have to look stuff up though. Like I can sound out the words and read it. And
it's weird.
In front of me, I can read it for you. I'll have to look up the words though.
Yeah, I can read the sounds. I don't know what I'm saying, but
that's like beginner stage.
But it's interesting how we know how to like read it, but we never learn what we're reading. Right. We just can pronounce it.
Yeah.
You pronounce the.
You should take a look, Ariel. There's a whole set of languages that people have not yet translated that show up in the papyri Graecae Magicae, the Greek magical papyri, and they give them names. One of them was the tongue of the dragon, and they printed in Greek. They said this is the letters that are used, like the Orphic letters are used by the dragon, and they give the name of the dragon, and it's in a
How do they
language that you could
describe the
never
dragon, by the
ever
way?
see.
How do they describe the dragon?
It's just use, unfortunately, it's just a description. I'm going off a literary description that just says Drakon. But within the cult, you know what a dragon is, right? People, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't introduce the dragon, right? Who's the dragon? The dragon is a specific group. It's a part of a college, right? The guards, they're usually temple guardians. They're in charge of some relic. For example, in the Grove of Mars, right? And for those of you who are esoterically minded, this will help situate you where we are. In the Grove of Mars is a sacred tree, and on the sacred tree is a pelt, right? On the skin of this pelt is written the song of Lady Babylon, and a dragon guards that pelt. And if you lick that song, if you let that song into you, you'll enter into communion. Yeah. And you'll have that ionic life. You don't have that ionic life now, right?
Well, it kind of sounds like the Book of Genesis, the Garden of Eden and the snake and the tree, and it sounds highly familiar. And I really do believe that us, everyone's sort of just reading that right off the bat before they know anything really. I mean,
I want to stress how important. I want to stress how important the Greek is, because when there's a passage in Revelation that makes no sense in English. If you read it in English, you're not going to be like, "What the hell is going on?" And it talks about how Hades and death and the sea gave up their dead, and then were cast into the fire. Nobody. I used to go to church all the time. No one ever explained this to me. No one understood what it meant. In the Greek, it completely makes sense, because Thanatos, Thasala, and Hades are three gods that are invoked in the Orphic mysteries. Those are deities. So Revelation has some pagan shit going on. Those are three different gods.
Oh, absolutely. Of course. No, I mean, it's all pagan. I mean, even the Jewish stuff has
absolutely
some pagan stuff. I mean, there's the whole
Oh man.
No, yeah, no, of course. I mean, there's and I fully subscribe to. I think that Freud's cursory read of everything was in Moses and monotheism is a pretty it's a pretty good it's a good kind of like approach sort of towards getting at what might have actually been the case. I mean, I think that that I don't know if you guys know about that. You guys are aware of Moses and monotheism? I mean, it's just the last essay that Freud ever.
I haven't read it, but I know what you're talking
close
about.
To his deathbed.
Yeah,
but it's a very, very controversial theory that he has, and it really, I mean, what he says is that is that Moses was probably a deputy or some sort of a priest from the Egyptian from the Egyptian kingdom of Akhenaten, and that he was Akhenaten being the first monotheist in history that we know of. He basically outlawed all the Egyptian deities and prayer of I mean, he pretty much did what Donald Trump did to us, but he basically outlawed all these things, and he only he forced everybody to they focused on one deity. He focused on one deity. It was the sun god. It was Ra or the Aten, Aten. Yes.
It was very
So
unpopular. It got reversed as
and
soon as he
and there's
died.
no and so
But that's what I say. I'm gonna leave one up you real
what was
quick.
that?
It was very unpopular, and as soon as he died, they replaced it back with the Ammon and Osiris and
Right,
Isis
right. It was like
pantheon.
a very brief. There was a brief, but it completely destroyed. Like I mean, like it was like a huge scandal, and so Freud's theory is that on the outskirts of Egypt, during this time, one of his people, one of his sort of like top dogs or whatever that like was stationed at one of his name was Moses, and that the Levites who went out into they sort of went into exile, went into the desert, and they met up with some other another Semitic tribe that was much more primitive, that were enthralled to a volcano god named Yahweh, more or less.
Yeah, he could be right.
And that the Jew. What was that?
I was going to say Hecataeus of Abdera is a
Second?
Hecataeus of Abdera is a 4th century BCE writer, the first person to ever write about Moses outside of any biblical text. And he talks about Moses, and he talks about there's the chant Amen, and he uses hallelujah. And another one of the court poets, Callimachus, a couple decades later, they're using these chants Hallelujah, Amen in pagan settings for all the gods.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to ask, is Moses sticking that serpent poison up his rectum? Is that where he's getting it? Because he's bringing out the Draco, and he's got all of the cult. If you look at the Septuagint, the Greek lights up for the cult right there with what Moses is doing. So Is Moses, do you guys think Moses, I mean, he's got the tent where you can get so high they have to put a rope on your leg, right? That they can pull you out.
Well, you're talking about the pharmacology aspect of it, but what about the transcendental meditation aspect of it? If we're talking about something like Kundalini, for instance, where when you meditate, you also get the feeling like there's a snake that's going up through your spine into your brain.
Yeah.
Well, here's okay. But going back to that Garden of Eden thing that we were talking about earlier, because I really do think that, like, it's to just gloss over it is really our initiation into a world of make believe that we never are able to basically extract ourselves from ever again, because we just take it for granted. And the ritual is literally us reading that passage is us biting from the apple in the Garden of Eden. Like that is our ritual, and we will be doomed with knowledge from now on. Well, why is knowledge a bad thing? I mean, we venerate it.
What you're getting at is what the earliest Christians were debating early on. You had different sides of Christianity. With the so-called Gnostics thought that the true salvation was biting that knowledge. That was a very popular idea in Christianity, but also in Revelation, they talk about the altar of Satan in Pergamum in chapter 2. There, if you go to Pergamum, there actually is an altar to Zeus Ammon, the highest god of the pantheon, horned Zeus, this devil character, and the Christians are saying that. And there's a frieze underneath them. This was built in the time of Augustus in Pergamum, and it's depicting a war in heaven. So Revelation has a war in heaven. The altar at Pergamum, where Zeus Ammon, with the horned Ammon, Zeus, where they're sacrificing to Zeus in Pergamum, the author of Revelation is calling that the altar of Satan. So what's happening is you have these two opposing ideologies in theology and religion. One of them is submitting to this one God and rejecting knowledge, rejecting society, become a hermit, live in the desert, drop out of society. And on the other side, you have the people who say, attain no sin, eat from the tree of knowledge, and go for worship Lady Babylon, worship that. So that's how you get these two opposing Satanism and Christianity, basically. That's
Well, so the Freudian analysis that I like to like sort of I know it's very unfashionable, but like I think there's something to it. If you were to take, to me, the the story of the garden and of Adam and Eve is basically it's basically like a it's like a sort of a dumbed down for children kind of lullaby or something that like basically like an older man with like, you know, who doesn't want to corrupt the mind of like a 5-year-old who's questioning where he came from. So his grandpa is basically telling him, and I don't know if his grandpa is Adam or if it's Adam's son or whatever, but the point is that like there seems to be the question about like where is mom and where did I come from and that kind of stuff. And I feel it's like the birds and the bees kind of thing. So if you think about it like that and you take it more or less literally, the story sounds like to me like, you know, you have Adam and Eve are these two people, a man and a woman who maybe haven't had sex yet, and but they for whatever reason Adam tells Eve on God's command, I guess, you know, supposedly that she doesn't go to like the edge of the plot, you know, basically like there's a tree at the furthest end of the garden in their backyard or whatever, and that's where the neighbor is. Okay, that's where the neighbor resides, and he instructs her to, you know, tend the garden, but not go to that one tree, because I think there's Wilson on the other side of that gate, you know, and I think that like that the snake is really just a metaphor for the other man that's basically on the other side of the
it's also gate. The serpent is also the symbol of the mysteries of like this, like the symbol of medicine, having the serpent. That's the
it's also the symbol.
The pagans. That's what I'm saying.
It's also the penis. Okay, it's also
right. But let me blow your mind. Let me blow your mind for a second. Let me blow your mind for a second. One of the chants in the Eleusinian mysteries was the most famous mystery cult in all of the world. Basically, everybody wanted to go. You had people from India traveling from India all the way to Greece to get initiated into the Eleusinian mysteries, right next to Athens. They had a chant for Persephone. Persephone was the queen of the underworld. She's this daughter of Demeter. Her chant is Iwa, Iwa, Iwa. It's a Bacchic chant. It's spelled the same.
Sounds like the Song of Babylon.
She takes a bite of the pomegranate and she gets stuck in Hades. ADES, as might be etymologically connected to Adam. The ADs, Adam. Anyways, long story short is, instead of getting kicked out of paradise, she's stuck in Hades. But in this sense, she becomes the queen of the underworld. She's empowered by it. So there's two different philosophies being baked within these texts.
Well, I personally think that like that Eve wasn't honest with Adam, and I think that like that she had an affair with the neighbor. Okay, she took his seed, she took his knowledge, quote unquote. I think that's just the
only thing the text says, though, the only liar it says explicitly is God, right?
Yeah, well, the point is that like I think
points that out. He's like, hey, this dude's lying to when you.
Did the serpent lie?
It's a book of.
Your eyes are going to be open.
Wait, one at a time, everybody. One at a time.
A man wrote the book. Okay, I mean, a man. Like I said, this is a story that he's telling to his grandson, who's asking questions, and he doesn't want to, you know, he's beating around the bush. He's trying to find a way to explain it to him in so many ways that doesn't, like, you know, and I'm sure he's probably like also it's a blow to his ego to think about it this way. He doesn't want to say that there was another that Eve that he was that the kid was a product of the infidelity. Okay, this is the thing. Like the son was basically a product of this of a pregnancy that happened, and they hadn't even had sex yet. And so this is between Adam and Eve hadn't had sex. She gets pregnant, and then basically it's with the neighbor's wife, with the neighbor's semen.
Wilson.
And the story that's told to the kid is basically not that he's a child of, you know, the one who raised him is Adam. So that's the key. So the kid was a bastard of sorts. What happened with Eve after this? Did Eve she bore? There was Seth. There was
there was Seth, but before Eve there was also Lilith, which a lot of people forget. But she is linked to another pagan goddess, right?
Right. Well, I mean, all of them are like basically there's all these like you know, there's the Sethians, there's the Lilith, there's all these the Gnostic pantheon or whatever you want to call it.
The Lilith is like a desert dwelling spirit that is surrounded by satyrs, which
Did you notice, Neil, that's where the woman in Revelation 12 goes? She goes Ace Eremon.
Yeah.
She goes into that spot, so you can see within the cult what's actually going on.
But what Ammon's saying is this is the most important thing of everything we're talking about, because we can imagine a grandfather telling a story to his son. That's one way to look at it. But what Ammon's saying is there is cultic imagery being cast onto the reader. Desert, serpent, fruit of knowledge. These are all repurposed symbols that mean something to people. It's embedded within culture. That's why
very Jungian.
Rod of Asclepius. Jung wrote about this his whole career.
Yeah, this is
that Rod of Asclepius being the symbol of medicine. That's the serpent, right?
Sure.
It's playing off that same riff, basically.
Sure.
But I want to throw this into the conversation. So even though people would say, well, Christianity just happened to be the religion that people ended up embracing, if we look at the entire world that we're in as one where everything happens for a certain reason, then maybe there is a certain reason at play as to why there are so many people today that think we are in Revelation, and that think that certain technologies that are coming about, be it, you know, certain medicinal things or the Elon Musk Neuralink microchip, where they look at these things, they compare it to the mark of the beast, because the comparisons, I think, are pretty apt.
I think there's a very, you know, I mean, the whole idea of at the end of the Ghostbusters, you know, when they say, like, you know, clear your mind, don't think of anything, and then all of a sudden the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man sort of like kind of comes out of nowhere, because Dan Aykroyd's character tried to think of something so harmless, basically, and yet, you know, this marshmallow thing is destroying New York. I think that it's that there's like the psychological interpretation, which is that there's it's kind of like one sin on top of another, or like one sort of faux pas on top of another, and it's sort of like, you know, things getting lost, but like basically underneath everything there's a repressed knowledge of something that basically manifests itself afterwards. It's sort of like the creature of our unconscious that basically gets, you know, that's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, essentially. But a fair amount of projection. A fair amount of projection is involved with that. So for instance, like there could be a lot of guilt associated with some of these stories and these symbols, and an intentional mudding up of the facts, trying to sort of like pave over some inconvenient truths in order to make something palatable for one other end or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of it's kind of like, you know, like reading a you know, like an exquisite corpse, basically, and just basically trying to extrapolate some sort of divine meaning behind it, or some intention behind it, but it's really just a catalog of a series of errors, or a series of lies and we're supposed to basically like, and we take that to be the sort of like the ultimate book that we refer to. So it's a kind of like an interesting conundrum. I mean, the Bible would never be admissible in a court of law as like a sort of a verifiable text, because there's no author. For one thing, there's nobody taking any kind of credit for it. It's probably the result of several authors. I mean, do you think that if the first author knew that like the next author would come around in 100 years and add to it, in the name of God, I mean, that they probably wouldn't have written the first part.
Well, it was never considered to be like one book, right, Neil? Like in the Hebrew Torah, that was considered to be a library, or how would you say exactly? Like what exactly?
It's the first 5 books, right? I mean,
the Septuagint was translated in Egypt, in Alexandria, and then that's when you start getting compiles of books put together. The Torah is the Hebrew version of that, and there's no mention of Torah or anything until after the Septuagint is made, by the way.
So what was it called? It was just called the 5 books of Moses?
There were just papyrus scrolls that were in circulation all by themselves.
Right.
And then they get compiled together, and then you have this tradition basically in Jerusalem where these priests are worshiping Yahweh.
Well, what about during the Babylonian captivity? Was there any writing at all mentioning like, hey, these crazy Hebrews, they're starting to write all this stuff down? What's going on with them? Or is that all buried and we don't know exactly what went down during the Babylonian captivity? When, from what I understand, a lot of these books started to make themselves available.
This is such a problem. Can I just chime in?
Sure.
This is such a problem in antiquity that they have people who are setting texts, right, who are working on them, who are saying, Africanus, for example, is having a debate, and he says, hey, this is not originally Hebrew. It can't be. It's using colloquial Greek. And they're going back and forth. Before the Septuagint, you don't have a Bible, right? You don't have it. It doesn't exist. Right? Until somebody can get in a time machine and go dig it up, doesn't exist. So our earliest form is that Greek form. And I wanted to just add, I've got one thing I want to throw out there, just as a lure. We have in our possession, everybody has access to it. We have in our possession, preserved by Galen, the formula for the creation of the Medusa under Nero. Nero was the one who got it through his arch physician, who acquires this in the East and brings it back to Nero. It's a formula for creating the vessel. When you look in Revelation and you see the cup of adultery, that word porneia in Greek, you can translate that as fornication. You can translate it as adultery, but you can also translate it as temple worship. So her cup of temple worship, which she is producing, Nero ends up with the compound formula to turn the person into that cup. And we have it. It's in dactylic hexameter because it comes from the Orphic hymn tradition, which is 800 years previously. Right to the 1st century, Anno Domini. So I just want to throw this out there. If you're talking about Ariel's talking, he's looking at things from a psychological standpoint, analyzing, boom, boom, boom. I get that, and I follow that. What if we want to step outside and we want to say, in a practical world, we have the means to create the original communion, that thing that Jesus, that Moses, that they're all drawing on. We have a way of reproducing that thanks to the work of a guy named Nero, who some people might think was a bad guy, who said, by the way, it's the Christians who burned down Rome. Right? It's the Christians. Ultimately, with Christians, you get insurrection and you get destruction. That's what.
Well, you get that from Jews too. So I mean that's the seed. That's Jesus.
What is that? Is it a monotheistic thing? Is it a
I think
what is that?
I think it's specifically. I think it's the kernel of Judaism. I think that it is it is our. I tend to think that it's basically it's a creature of our making, and anybody who basically like is it's our sort of our fate. We have a catastrophic kind of like a fate in just embedded in our. I mean, we were a
Well, it's funny. We have a catastrophic fate, yet we still keep existing, no matter what civilization happens to come and go. We're still around.
Because I think that the sin of the Jews is in their lack of spirituality, and I mean I think that like the reality is that like they having had this sort of like having been given the tools or sort of being the chosen people, I guess, and having this relationship with the one true God. It was and actually writing writing the Bible in the Hebrew and keeping the language around essentially verbatim, so that they could actually never have to deal with any kind of translation issues, and they keep it word for word. That was a way to sort of just preserve, preserve the Bible. Like so that there wouldn't be any kind of any kind of any kind of ambiguity as to
And
what
you're saying that from like a Christian perspective, as in like how they.
I'm saying it from a Jewish perspective. It was the fact that like Hebrew is still spoken today, the language that the Bible was written in. I mean, I think that's
It's not exactly the same. The modern
it's
Hebrew
not
isn't
exactly
the
the
same.
same. Not
Yeah.
exactly the same. I get it, but like, but it's close enough that basically that there is no ambiguity as to what the text actually said. And I mean it just take them at their word for a second. It's like it's if that's the case, then it doesn't really solve another issue. It's meant to solve that issue, to keep the word sacred and keep it holy, and keep it keep the secret with them, with those who have the language.
When I was on an archaeological dig in Israel for that a little over a year that I was there, I partied with all sorts of Israelis who didn't consider themselves chosen and had complete contempt for the religion.
Yeah,
I mean, these were hardcore. Most of them had just been cycled through the military, right? And
but it's also
they were just stationed. What do you do with those guys, Ariel, who don't have that exclusivity? They're not like.
well, you have to ask yourself what Judaism is. I mean, it goes back into the question of, because it's sort of it's pre-religion, it's a race, it's a bloodline, it's a history.
I would disagree with that, because I
No,
think
but
Judaism comes out of a tradition of a world where there's many gods, whereas in your temple you devote to the one god that you have that rules your land. Athena rules Athens, Serapis rules Egypt, Yahweh
right.
rules Jerusalem. But they went so devoted to this one god, it becomes monotheistic eventually. They're
It's
not,
beyond the
it's not
monotheism.
pre-religion, it's post-religion.
They right. Well, right in that definition of religion. But what I'm saying is that like they really are the they took the youngest god and they made him the fucking the the alpha and omega, and
Right.
they just basically every other god has more or less fallen by the wayside, and become fallen out of popularity since then. There's only one god that really even has any kind of footprint right now, and that's the Jewish God, the same God as Allah, the same God as the Christian God. So I don't know what that. I mean, what is that? Well, I think it has something to do with the fact that it's a portable God. I think it has to do with the fact that you didn't have to take you don't have to like see a giant idol. That's not how you sort of point to the presence of it. It's invisible. It's nowhere. It's in the word. It's in what the thoughts of the Hebrews. They were able to roam around and mix with other civilizations while sort of keeping their own God to themselves and in their mind and in the words. So that made it a very I think that just sort of that kept it going. I think for people that basically have no army and no means of protecting themselves against powerful armies and other stuff. I think that the only thing that they could do to survive was have this thought in their mind, this thought form that each and every single one of them would understand what it was in their own way. And but I think that like the natural consequence of that is that you have somebody like Jesus who comes around and promises to WikiLeaks that secret about God, the Jewish God, to everybody. So that's going to catch on like wildfire. Just as as far as like cults go, it's pretty. How do you sign up to get everlasting life? To enter into heaven. Oh well, you just have to. You don't have to sign anything. You just have to basically like hear the story, and accept Jesus into your heart. So I think that's
a lot less rules though than what's under
it's even
Judaism.
less rules than AA. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of the best deal ever, and I think that like that's what made it so appealing. And it made it so successful. Was just that you really just had to have this thought form in your mind, and you learn the history of. I mean, Jesus was arguably the best Jew or the worst Jew, one way, whichever way you want to cut it. But I mean, he definitely knew his.
Does it bother you, Ariel, that at the time these mystery religions are being performed that Jesus is involved in, that they involve children sexually and the collection of semen from children? I've read in medical.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that like there was also the environment was ripe for somebody like Jesus to come along. I mean, there were all sorts of other heretics and sort of like offshoots that were happening around the time, because I think there was the Hellenistic influence that had permeated and creeped into Judaism by that point. So that it was and the Jews were corrupt as they said by that point. I mean the Pharisees and so
wait, doesn't Ammon mean that within Christianity though that was the case? Ammon, can you make that clear, because I want to make sure we understand you.
Yeah, I'm talking about all this.
Microphone.
I'm talking about all the sexy ones, right? All the Ophites, right? We can also talk Gnostics, but I'm saying in the Hellenistic lead up that you're talking about, Ariel, when you go to these synagogues, I went to a Hellenistic synagogue, and you know what? It had Greek all over it, and it had the god of the Ion, which was fantastic. I mean, it made sense to me as somebody who'd been across those texts before. It made sense to me. But yeah, you're right. We're coming out of this where those naked boys are involved in those rites, right? There's stuff going on, and it's down to the point of yeah. You and I can worship Zeus, who drinks out of Ganymede. What? Yeah, they have the phrase "drinking from the cup of Ganymede."
That's the young boy that Zeus adopted to be his cupbearer in the heavens.
That nectar comes from his anus. I've shown Neil.
Yeah,
right.
It's all in the text.
Where the texts are, it comes from his anus, right? There's a direct association. I think the anus killed
in Athens. In Athens, there's I'm pretty sure it's in one of these Puerolites texts where they talk about these erotic epigrams, and they talk about how the young boys in Athens would be given away by their parents to some priesthood to get initiated. Is a prepubescent, and a lot of times these initiation there's erotic things happening in these initiation rites. You know,
Right.
Ammon knows exactly what I'm talking about. He's been
No, I mean, but that's we all know that
But
there was
eventually, did Christianity put an end to a lot of those things? Like as Christianity started to evolve into what it is today. I mean,
well, apparently
obviously,
not.
yeah.
Apparently
Well,
not,
the
because
Catholic Church and all
Right.
that. I mean, yes.
That's
but,
what Ammon wrote a book about this subject, right, Ammon?
Yeah, child abuse, ritual child abuse in the early church. One of the professors that I work with said, "This is what's getting you fired," right?
Yeah.
Because I wrote a book about it. But yeah, they're going through ritual abuse in the early church, and it melds perfectly with this period of time when they're saying we have to take out the drugs from the communion. They try to sit, and all of a sudden, all these other people who are using the drugs become heretical. Right. So, yeah, those drugs are there. And by the way, that for those of you who feel safe, right, because you're coming through Moses, you're not, because those same terms are the ones that you see Moses using.
yeah,
Right. He is entering that arena. So it's like the linguistics are like amber. They can preserve your DNA perfectly. And so
No,
the way that tent in the wilderness is first referred to as a telesterion. That's a place where you come to meet the God as the oracle.
Yeah.
I mean, and that tel root is just that's the initiation. Of course, you have to have a priesthood for that, right? And it involves snakes and it involves old rites. So yeah, I guess what I chase with Neil and why I'm persistent with Neil is saying, look at these things that are in those texts that we never discussed. Nonus, for example, this is the last one I'll throw in there. Nonus tells us that vinegar, the quote unquote vinegar that Jesus was offered on the cross, was an antidote for the dipsas poison. Now you go look at the Byzantine Geoponica, which is a drug manual / farming almanac. And it has in it the vinegar. It calls the vinegar recipe for the antidote. And why would he be taking dipsas? Dipsas makes you thirsty, right? It's a venom that causes you to have the unquenchable thirst, right? You can drown somebody; they'll still be wanting to drink. But it is also part of the mystery communion. He's got to have it on board. And Galen says that prepubescent excreta, that prepubescent ejaculation is what contains the galene. The galene is the antidote to, it means calm seas, galene. And that is the antidote to the crazy dipsas that he's got on board, which you can't get by swallowing. They administer it either to the eyes, and you are known by having a purple band across your eyes, or the purple anus. And we have a great passage about applying the dildo, the medicated dildo, and how to use it in Ritu. We actually have it in Rite with Petronius, right? And
did you learn this in jail?
What's that?
sorry.
No, I was the one that went to prison. I was the one.
Hey guys, I'm sorry I have to do this, but I gotta run. But that was really.
If you don't mind, I'm gonna get your contact info from Lev, and I want to get you on my.
I want to get both of you guys' contacts.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesomeness. Thank you,
Ariel.
so much.
It's always a great pleasure to have you on, brother. I hope to speak to you real soon.
Take care, guys. Bye.
Take care. Now I am going to see where exactly Nina Paley, because she is supposed to come in on the stream. She was feeling a little bit weird because of the vid. She recently got the vid, but she was feeling a little better. So I'm going to call her right now and see what exactly is up. But while I'm calling her, Neil, what do you think about Ammon's very interesting revelations here about how a lot of this stuff works?
When I first interviewed Ammon, I interviewed Dr. Kyle Ruck. Everyone knows Kyle Ruck. He was with, he was on Jordan Peterson's channel. He's the guy who was writing about the Eleusinian mysteries and how they're using psychedelics. People pushed back on him for a long time, and then his work was vindicated through archaeology and new things being revealed. Anyways, I had him on. I got a hold of Dr. Ammon as well. Had him on my channel, and he came out fiery with things I've never heard before. And I was just like, what is this dude talking about? This is crazy. But I'm telling you, everything he said, when I looked into it, was true. Because it's all in the sources. He's not telling you some theory from some professor at Yale. He's telling you stuff that's in the sources from ancient Greek that you can go and look up, that you can go and find. It's all backed up. Like, and that's why I'm like, some of this stuff you might be hearing, if you're watching this right now, you're probably like, these guys are out of their minds. Just look into it. Just check on what he's saying. He's not lying.
Yeah, and that happens. That happens all the time. People come back to me and they're like, "I thought you were just exaggerating." No. When I'm talking about these drugs and the cult, I'm talking about texts that I've seen, and I can give you sources. Dr. Carl Ruck is a friend. I would consider him a friend. And I was told about him after my dissertation got censored. They said, you have to take out the chapter on recreational drugs. The whole thing was about Roman pharmacy, right? And they said, you have to take out the section on recreational drugs because they didn't want, I guess it looks bad for the Romans that very important people, artists and leaders, statesmen. Augustus was a huge junkie.
Marcus Aurelius was on poppy, which is heroin.
Yeah, Galen had to adjust the dosage of Marcus Aurelius's daily opium because he said he was getting too used to it, that he needed a stronger dosage.
He's the stoic. He's the face of stoicism. The man who everyone looks, when you think of stoicism, you think of Marcus Aurelius. He's on dope, dude. Like, that's crazy.
So they didn't want to hear it, but they had kept Carl Ruck silent for years because he had been saying there are drugs involved in the Eleusinian mysteries. And that was the culture in education was so adverse to that because we were the anti-drug generation. We were Nancy Reagan's people.
Yeah. Now, Far From Dawning here in the chat says, please list sources. So where can people confirm what you're saying right now?
Yeah, for those of you who want to see Augustus, I want Augustus, the Augustus, right, as a drug user, go to Scribonius Largus. Scribonius Largus, he was a first century Roman physician with the military. He wrote a book called the Compositiones. It's basically a whole bunch of prescriptions. And in it, he talks about not only the cult prescriptions for the things that you shouldn't know about, because he was having to create antidotes, right? He wasn't creating them himself. He was finding them in other sources. And so he's got antidotes for all those popular cult drugs. But he also has some personal favorites because he's close to the emperor. So he's able to get access to the library. And he knows where these antidotes are. So anyway, you want to see Augustus on drugs, go to that. Galen has plenty of comments on Marcus Aurelius and his shape. Galen's the best source. For those of you who are saying, look, this guy's nuts. He's talking about a bunch of things that are just crazy about drugs and sex and cult. Go to one work. It's called Galen's Antidotes. There are literally thousands of pages of untranslated pharmacology, thousands of pages. And in Galen's Antidotes, he will explain to you not only current thinking of how the drugs are being used by the body and how the physician incorporates them into his activity, but also the history of how these dotes and antidotes developed. They are using, and he points back to the Egyptians allowing the Greeks to use drugs on prisoners and in order to do experimentation way back in Hellenistic Greek, right?
Well, like the Hellenistic MK Ultra.
Yeah,
you could
MKO.
Say.
What was the MKO?
MK Ultra, it was a program that was devised by the CIA for mind control using LSD. So I guess you could say that back then that was their MK Ultra, using whatever they had to get information from the the Spartans or the the Babylonians or the Iranians.
That's what Pliny said, Lev. Pliny said exactly that. He said the Magi are the ones to call in to question people when you've got conspiracies, because he said they'll give you a drug that'll make you super, super afraid, right? He describes it like it's a psychosis. And then the Magus will come in when you're under the influence and will make these funny movements and these, let the god possess him to the guy, and the guy's screaming, telling him I mean, all the secrets you want to get out of him. So
Wow.
there's a part of this tradition is there, and they're doing this from Georgia. They're doing it from ancient Georgia. This stuff all goes back to Bronze Age Georgia and the influence of the Scythian, these
Well,
nomadic
Georgia,
people.
Azerbaijan, like that was where the Mithraic cults were.
Yeah. They call Medea Mithra. They call Medea Mithra for a reason.
So what we're getting here, by the way, real quick, what we're getting here is that the Magi were ancient CIA. That's what I'm getting from this.
Let me throw a couple more sources that people might be interested in. So, and this is actually a Christian source. It's Clement of Alexandria. He writes, it's called the Protepticus. It's exhortation to the Greeks. And he writes about the rites of the Eleusinian mysteries and what's going on in there. He gives a lot of this orgiastic image. He writes about all this stuff that was supposed to be secret for initiates only. Somehow he gets a hold of this information and he just completely reveals it all. That's one of the good sources, I think. Pausanias' description of Greece, it's filled with so much cultic stuff. He's just going along all the temples of Greece and explaining all the stuff that's going on there. And then there's if you want to know about the festivals of Attis, where they cut off their testicles and get castrated, Celestius is a source for this. Julian the Apostate is also a source for this. And Arnobius, Arnobius. This is all out there. This is all out there for you to grab and go look into. Just read the primary sources. Don't read someone else's opinion. Get your own opinion.
It's fun when you are reading those primary sources and you see all of the good stuff, like the sex drugs and how they're used. And you realize, oh, it makes sense then that the dragon is consuming that fetus. The dragon is taking his communion from her. And while she is ejaculating, she is extruding, because they use abortifacients. The oracle can't become pregnant, right? It's the rule. I don't know. It messes with hormones. It does something weird so that they can't enter whatever state they're entering. She actually gives him that aborted fetus. And this becomes such a big deal in the mystery that the early Christians are getting charged with taking their fetal excrement and baking it into bread that they then use in communion, which makes perfect sense. Ritualistically, makes perfect sense for the time, and it fits the context. And you're like, oh, maybe those accusations weren't, because the Christians.
Well, it also reminds me of the accusations they leveled at the Jews with the matzahs.
And there are demons that come out of those Jewish altars, right? We all know that. What the heck does that mean, right? When they're saying there are demons that come out. The Christians that were abusing children said that if you defile a child, it can't be then possessed by the pagan demon, right?
Oh.
Wow.
Well, because it's already been possessed by one, so it's like sloppy seconds. I don't know. That's horrible. I'm horrible. Anyway, you understand what I'm saying. Like, it's a very weird situation when we have all these revelations come up. Like, speaking Book of Revelation, these are the revelations that I don't think a lot of people know about. But I don't really think it changes the quality of a sober-minded individual, citizen of the United States, who goes with his family to church on Sunday and does the barbecue. Like, whatever horrible things ended up leading up to where we are today and getting to where we are today, there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and horror and cruelty that went into creating any kind of an advanced society. So the question is, like, okay, what do we do with this information? Are we going to give up the vehicle, or are we going to give up Christianity when it's something that unites us together as, and I'm not saying us specifically here in this call, Ariel aside, it's something that unites a lot of people into just, at the least, having an excuse to get together and understand each other a little bit better. And I don't see anything wrong with that.
United under pedophilia. Originally,
I disagree.
That's my only problem, Lev. What do you?
Let me jump in. Let me just say this. I don't mind the guy the scenario you just relayed to me. Some guy who goes to church and he's whatever. I don't care about that. But what I do want people to realize that there's other. Christianity is not the only thing as only religion that exists, and it comes out of a certain time period where there's all these other methods and all these other different kinds of Christians existed, all these other kinds of cults existed, and those paths should be available to people as well. I'm not just saying everyone should be atheist. I'm saying everyone should have their there should be more diversity in the religious world.
But this goes back to a different argument of when you have the mindset of the average normie human being that, well, you know what, this one's not so special, why don't I choose something else? That something else that might be chosen may be way more horrible than whatever it is that they already have, because when the person has a free reign to do whatever they want.
That's a hypothetical thing that you just said.
I don't think it's hypothetical at all. I think it's a matter of if there's if there's no pressure. What if it is? If there's no pressure that's applied to a human being in their life, like if there's no excuse, oh well, you don't have to get up, you can just lay in bed all day, eat chips, and play video games. If that's your religion,
that's freedom.
That's not freedom, because freedom is also freedom is also freedom from having these desires that carry you into a bad state. I mean, sure, you could say
freedom is being allowed to destroy yourself. That's freedom.
Okay, look, you can destroy yourself.
What you're talking about is Saudi Arabia or Iran. That's bullshit.
There's a gradient to that. No. On the far end, there's Saudi Arabia. On the less farther end, there's like a family that makes sure that their kids doesn't go out and do drugs.
You're adding more freedom to the equation, more liberalism to the equation.
Of course, and I'm not opposed. You know me, you know that I'm not opposed to liberalism, but my point is that when you completely open the door and say, you know what, none of these traditions matter, you guys just do whatever the hell you want, then the structure...
Who said that?
When you're talking about giving people choice to have a lot of these different religions, the only concern that I have is that this bedrock system that they have, that just like regular people have, if it fades, I don't know if they're going to be able to grab on to something as tangible.
If tomorrow an asteroid falls from the sky and kills me, then this nothing. You're just throwing out if this, if that. What does that even mean? I'm talking about people understanding where these religious ideas come from and being able to recreate or go back and start something based off the real rites, the truth, where theology actually comes from. Orpheus, the original theologian. I'm trying to bring people back to that.
That gives me a mental erection.
Yes, I'm glad it does.
But you guys are talking about the intellectuals.
Celsus is right. Christianity is a degradation of the rites.
But you guys are talking about the intellectuals, such as yourselves. You're talking about people who have the ears to hear what you're saying. Most people don't have the ears to hear what you're saying. And for most people, if you tell them, well, you know what, guys, what you do is just like this derivative of whatever, they're going to say, all right, well, what do I do? Okay, then I'm just going to, I don't know, I'm just going to go and eat chips all day and not care about improving myself. You know, like that's
on them. It's on them.
That's my son eating chips and playing video games all day.
all I'm saying is that we gotta be careful when it comes to breaking the hearts of a lot of these people that put in a lot of time and energy and devotion into believing that this certain way the world works is it. And I'm not saying that there's not going to come a time. I'm not saying that there's not going to come a time when it's going to change.
Let the Wizard of Oz stay behind the curtain. That's that's false. I reject that.
One piece at a time. That's all I'm saying. If we're talking about changing people's minds, let's first approach the people who are strong enough to be able to deal with having their mind changed and then trying to adopt something where they're going to have a good control over themselves. And I understand you guys are pointing out things like these great Roman emperors, you know, like the Stoics, that they were all a bunch of drug addicts. Fine, you know, nobody's perfect. But if those were like, if that's the example of like the great ones, if that's the example of the people whose books we read, imagine what the rest of them are like. You know what I'm saying? Imagine what the rest of the people are like when you tell them, you know what, you guys can do whatever the hell you want, go nuts. And I think we're kind of seeing it today. I think we're kind of seeing it today when it comes to a lot of things that are going on the internet with a lot of younger people, where they don't really, it doesn't seem like there's that much of an emphasis on virtue or certain great things that you can do to improve other people's lives. It's more about, well, what is it, this thing that I'm going to be known as so that other people are going to give me a lot of accolades for being known as this thing. You know, it's very empty to me. And that's what I feel happens when there is no emphasis on aiming for something higher within some kind of a spiritual vehicle.
I see what you're saying now, Lev. I see what you're saying. I think the thing higher is the museum. And I think we have a responsibility to bring that back to humanity.
Tell them about the etymology.
That one place we worship is reason. You know what I mean?
I agree.
That one place we worship is reason. If it is a reality, that Jesus Christ was arrested in a public park at 4 a.m. with a naked boy that he was engaging in sexual acts with, if that's a reality of history, we need to preserve that within the museum, don't we? Don't we have like a Isn't that our godly?
What is the museum? And because you and I both studied that word. There's the muse. There's an etymology there. Can you explain that real quick?
Yeah, that's why the ancients are always invoking her, right? These old temples, worships, these types of they weren't religions, they were markers for society. For example, Pythagoras was asked, we're going to send a colony out to so-and-so place, and what do you recommend we do? And Pythagoras said, number one, build a temple of the muses. Yeah, that said everything. When you're sending out a colony to create a society, you have to have some kind of standard where you can stand there and worship, quote unquote, truth, right? With that muse, they said, comes justice. If you've got the muses, if you venerate the muses, you get justice with it, right? That Athena, that justice, she comes through that muse, through that voice. And so that's what I'm saying with the text. What did they keep in Alexandria? Why was that such a big deal? Right? It's because
who burned it down, by the way? Who burned down the Library of Alexandria?
Christians.
Yeah. Who burned it down? Yeah, the people who didn't want.
Theodosius shut down everything. Shut down all the museums.
Books. Yeah.
Shut down all the museums. And that's what I want to see before I die. I want to see a temple of the muses being built in the middle of America. Right in the middle.
But you guys are dealing with a problem much like in that Steven Spielberg movie Indiana Jones, when he has to switch the statue with the fake one. You know what I mean? Or rather, in this case, you want to switch the statue with the real one. You want to switch it with the muses. Yeah. But unlike the ancients, when they were going into some virgin land or whatever, you guys are now dealing with an organized religion that's got all these thousands of years behind it. And the question is, if you want to get at the truth, how do you deal with so many people who think that whatever they have is their truth? Because you don't want to tear the whole thing down, limb from limb, because otherwise there's going to be a fracturing in our society. It's just something that I think we should take very seriously. How do we make sure that we have a smooth transition into something that actually does have way more truth in it? I don't know. What's the answer here? Ammon, you tell me.
I think that's a question you leave out to the world,
ether. Bring it out into the ether. That I think is a good way to end on. But we've got super chats, fellas. So let's go for the super chats right now. Here we go. Okay, here we are. A New Way Forward, 1999. If it's the end of times, it's time to break the rules. Okay, this one's for Ariel. See, he was gone too quick, but I'm gonna ask him off camera, and hopefully, if New Way Forward, if you're gonna be back, I am going to tell him what he answered, or you can go to the Discord, and I'm gonna put the Discord link here as well. And on Discord, if you join me, I'm gonna be able to communicate with Ariel and get the answer for you. But anyway, if it's the end of time, it's time to break the rules. Do you think more in terms of sharps or flats? How would you approach song concept for Living Through Revelations? That is not for you guys. I'm going to bring that one to Ariel.
It's a music question.
Yes.
But I did want to, next time I talk to him, I want to really show him the Orphic mysteries, because he's a musician. Mm-hmm. I think he would find his home right there.
Absolutely. Another one from
yes. I'm sorry to interrupt. It's so rude. I just want to say thank you for having me.
Thank you,
Neil
brother.
knows this. Neil knows this, but I have an oath to the devil to keep. So
that's right.
I have to.
He doesn't do super chats. He already.
Yeah. Oh no. Okay.
Neil,
go ahead. I forgot about that. I'm
Lev,
sorry.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, where can people find you?
People can find me on Lady Babylon. Yeah. Just at the channel. But Lev, I wanted to say thank you so much, because I want you to recognize that your forum is allowing discussion. You are participating in that. So I'm honored. I'm honored to be
I'm honored to have you, brother. Thank you so much for doing this. I would love to have you back.
Thank you, sir. Anytime that you want.
Excellent. And the final super chat. Oh no, this one's from Uwu. And Uwu, for those who are not familiar with furry terminology, Uwu is something that resembles the face of a furry. So now you guys know. If you guys were always wondering what the heck Uwu means, it's like a face that, a furry creature makes. Anyway, Uwu, $5. Will alien, in parenthesis, demonic, disclosure lead to the world's nations uniting as one against God, thus fulfilling Armageddon? Neil, go for it.
Probably would. I mean, it depends. It depends on what that alien looks like, what kind of technology we're dealing with, if it's gonna attack us or not. That's an interesting question. I never thought about. I had thought about it a little. Yeah, I guess it would. I guess we would have no choice. Like, do you really think Russia would be like, no, we need to fight for or Ukraine, even though there's aliens attacking us right now? No, I think things would change real quick if the aliens came into the picture.
There are a few things I recall reading from Jason Giorgiani's book, Closer Encounters, about that, about how you have had these, supposedly have had these UFOs that were stopping certain nuclear silos from being activated, and also how certain representatives of these blonde, blue-eyed Nordic aliens were going into undercover into various intelligence agencies and trying to get people to de-nuke, to de-arm. And so Giorgiani's point of view was that, well, these aliens want us weak so that we wouldn't be able to fight back when they're able to take over. So they're actually very concerned about us having this very advanced technology, and they're just as concerned about us having psychic powers, because that would also be another way that we would be able to fight against whatever they have in store for us. And his whole point of view has to do with the aliens wanting Earth to go back into this traditionalist, very agrarian lifestyle, so the elite, including themselves, would be in control of the sheep, and so it'll be just like it was like in Atlantis. It'll be just like it was, you could say, like in ancient Mesopotamia, where we have the rulers at the top of the pyramid, everybody in the bottom, so that we wouldn't have the normies being able to be just as powerful when it comes to using technology that they're not ready to use. Which is like, even Giorgiani admits it, like, if humans have access to 0-point energy, they can create a lot of chaotic things. And is it worth it? Is the juice worth the squeeze, as was recently said in a different setting? So I don't know, is the juice worth the squeeze? Like, Neil, would you be able to trust your neighbor, Wilson, or whoever, with having 0-point energy?
I have no idea. I don't know. That's like a Pandora's box question right there. I have no idea. Interesting, though. It's something to think about.
Definitely, it's very tough. And the last super chat of the day, we have Ted Francis, $4.99. Mark is the shortest and oldest gospel, and it doesn't add any extra fluff. So why would Mark include a naked boy running away from cops?
It's true. Yeah. No, it's Mark. The Gospel of Mark, it's the shortest one, right? Just as you said. And it's packed with everything that's in there is meaningful. It has relevance to the grand narrative of the mystery of Jesus. There's nothing just randomly. It's not like so they stopped and ate breakfast, and then there is nothing like that. It's all, everything matters until the last second of that book. So the fact that in Mark 14 you get this random, and then a naked boy ran away. What is that doing there? It's a good question to ask. Let me just say this real quick, though, because there's probably some people Christians might be watching this and saying, but I heard in church that this is a resurrected child. Okay, maybe. Anything's possible. It doesn't say that, though. Like, it doesn't specifically tell you that. So a lot of Christians throughout the centuries of really pondering over this, what the hell's going on here, have decided that Mark is sort of subliminally telling you that they were in this Garden of Gethsemane and he resurrected a child, but the apostles, for some reason, because they were asleep, you know how it says they fell asleep, they didn't see it happen. So Mark's like trying to make you think that you see what happened, but they didn't see what happened. It's kind of an odd take from it, but it still doesn't answer the question, why would Mark even put that there, you know?
Yeah, it's pretty odd. And one comment over here from a Twitter dude who I recognize, Arenji Sama, says, quite an obnoxious panel, this. So I think from people who are more of the Christian, and I don't know if he's Christian or not, but yeah, of the Christian persuasion, a lot of this stuff comes off as being like, oh, well, I know more than these, normie Christians over here, and I can say this and that. But it's like, why not look at the source materials and then say whether Neil's wrong?
Yeah, I was a Christian. I was a Christian.
Like, what are we really talking about here? Like, either we're talking about what Neil said is correct or what Neil said is bullshit. And there's only one way to do it. So it's like, what do you want to do? Do you want to say that, well, all of this is just like the temptations of the devil, I'm going to avoid it? Or if your faith is that strong, why not find out as much as you can about what's actually going on here and go from there? It's like,
that's the whole point of the garden of where the tree of knowledge is. It's you have to decide. Do you want to be sheltered and everything's going to be okay and don't take it, or are you going to be like, are you going to take the bite and open your eyes, like take that risk? It's a question. I'm not saying I have the answer to it, but it's the question. It's the question of all. It's the grand narrative question. Do
Absolutely.
we progress or do we drop out?
I mean, look at Christian right now. I don't know, Neil, to end on a very interesting note, Christian is out of jail. I don't know if you are aware of that.
I heard that Andrew Tate got out of jail today too.
Yeah, Andrew Tate got out of jail. Christian
Trump's going to jail. What's going on, dude?
I know, it's a very
times.
strange world. But do you know about Christian or no? Do you need a reminder?
Yeah. I've seen the lore of that.
Yeah, and Christian wants to create the dimensional merge where the world of his imagination ends up meeting the real world. But the reason why I mentioned that is one last thing that I wish I would have asked Ammon when he was here, but I would love to ask this of you as well. Would you say that a lot of these mystery cults, do they emphasize anything along the lines of whatever you think about, it's such a new agey thing to say, but it's like whatever you imagine will come to be if you imagine strong enough. Like if the power of your mind to create something, they don't have anything like that at all.
No. There's the same virtues, the same principles of, the same strive for piety is within the mystery religions as it is in Christianity. Christianity doesn't just come along. All these wicked pagans that are eating babies and having orgies all the time. It's not like that. There are these ideas of virtues and piety are still there. It's a very important thing people need to realize. The pagans weren't just wicked adulterers doing whatever they wanted. They were.
Well, we're not talking about wickedness per se. What we're talking about is what are the limitations of a certain spiritual technology, right? Like, are you able to do certain things at a more advanced state that would give you access to certain information that would not be available to other people, that would let you shape the world in a certain way that you would not be able to do were you not aware of certain ways of doing it. So it's kind of like saying, well, these are the tools that you need to build a shed. Like I'm not elevating it above that level of reality, but I'm just saying, like, is there anything, because I know that in the Hermetic text they talk about similar things about how the world is structured, so that is something that's definitely prevalent in a lot of the more, I wouldn't say new agey, but a lot of the theosophical societies, this idea that you would be able to change the nature of reality through, I'm not saying just like think about it for a second, all of a sudden you're going to get that brand new Porsche or whatever. I'm just talking about advancing your mind to such a degree that you would have access to.
What's the difference between that and faith and praying for things that you want to happen? It's the same thing. A Christian goes to church and they get in the booth and they say, God, please make the Bills win the Super Bowl. They do. This is a thing. People, there are Christians that are praying for dumb shit, hoping it comes true. What's the difference between that and the pagan doing that?
I wouldn't say there's a difference between the pagan doing that. What I would say there is a difference between an advanced monk or somebody who is, devoted their life to being able to put their brain state into like, gamma range, being able to concentrate very efficiently. Just in terms of what you end up getting out of what you put into something. If you do put in, not just like, like you're struggling in the toilet or whatever, but when you actually put in a lot of time and concentration, have a very sharp, clear-mindedness about something, even in terms of just being inspired to create a poem or to make a movie or whatever, the aha moment comes about when there is a surge of gamma waves inside of the brain. And that's been shown with advanced meditators and with other people who were tested on this, that the brain goes into a slower state, and a slower state, like, goes from alpha, beta, delta, and eventually it goes all the way back up to gamma as long as the cup is clear. As long as there's nothing that's filling it at the time, it allows people to concentrate and get answers to certain questions that they might have. All I'm saying
what's the question? Yeah, I'm trying to understand what's the...
Yes, what I'm saying is that within any mystery school tradition, was there an emphasis on that? I mean, I know that within Hinduism, there was definitely an emphasis on that, having to do with connecting to Brahma, connecting to God, where you would clear your mind, you would meditate, and then you would experience that feeling of oneness with the universe. So that was something that was passed down, at least in that particular tradition. All I'm saying is, if
you read about the Eleusinian mysteries, one of the themes that you keep hearing reoccurring, depending on whoever it is, even Clement, a Christian, writes about this. Even he says that people who got initiated and performed the rites and went through the tradition came out no longer fearing death and became more less anxious about life and death. So there was salvation being attained in these mysteries. So I don't know if that answers the question exactly.
No, it's related to it.
But yeah, it is related to it. You also have prayer in these rites too. Praying.
No, it's definitely related. Like what you're talking about is that concept of like you would have in the Orthodox Christianity the idea of theosis, merging with the Almighty. What I'm talking about is tangential to that, but it's more along the lines of, if you set your mind at a certain frequency through the process of meditation, you would be able to have, like a lot of Buddhist meditators report, being able to access these very quote-unquote transcendental states, being able to see visions that they normally would not be able to see. And what I'm trying to figure out here is that, was there anything written about in these mystery school traditions that talk about not only attaining those states, and obviously we could say like drugs were used to attain certain states like that as well, but not just attaining those states, but what you are able to then do in terms of affecting reality when you're in those states? Or was it purely you see whatever you see, but it's not going to affect anything outside of your particular experience?
I think that's kind of the point of the rites, prescribed rites, the secrets. I think that's the point, is they're getting the actual rituals themselves are done in a certain way to achieve a certain outcome from that state. So whatever is involved, whatever chanting is involved, whatever sacrifice of a certain animal, whatever it is that is what's going on there. And it's very hard to put together what was actually happening in the inner mysteries, because it was secret. Nobody wrote about it. There's really not a lot about it. People who wrote about it were killed for it. They would be put on trial, and it was one of the worst charges you can get, profaning the mysteries. If you got charged with that, you're done. And Aeschylus in the 6th century BCE wrote about he didn't write about it directly. He indirectly, kind of like Stanley Kubrick, the conspiracy theory, the conspiracy that Stanley Kubrick was like revealing mysteries. This is what happened with Aeschylus, the poet, the playwright. He got charged with revealing the mysteries in his plays. You can read his plays. Nobody really knows what it is that he was revealing. People have tried to piece it together, but nonetheless, he was charged with profaning the mysteries, and he beat the case. They didn't kill him. He beat the case. But I think he was ostracized and kicked out of the city. So it was a big deal.
What year was that?
Let me look up Aeschylus. I'll get you the exact date right now. He's the one who writes about the Persians and Prometheus. So he was born in 525 BCE. He died in 456. So 6th century, 5th century BCE.
Very interesting.
A long time ago, dude. Yeah. That's ancient world right there.
Exactly. But the only thing that I'm saying here in relation to that is, I think that the process of meditation itself is in a way kind of a master key for a lot of these things. Because keep in mind, like a lot of these people who were entered into the mystery, they were probably the normies of back then. Like just right now we were talking about, Marcus Aurelius, this great philosophical emperor was a, drug addict. Like a lot of people had a lot of things that they had to deal with in their life. And I imagine a lot of those people, they had a wife, kids, they, probably had slaves back then, that they had to deal with, they had invading armies. imagine somebody who has all of that shit on their plate versus some, I don't know, Buddhist monk who's got all the time in the world, who goes into a monastery and devotes himself to a very particular practice. The reason why I'm saying this is I don't necessarily think that the only way to gain these secrets of the mysteries is to do exactly what it is that those gurus within the mystery cult would have told a lot of these regular people to do. I think the reason why they did that was to kind of hook them into their particular way of attaining this gnosis. All I'm saying is that for a lot of us, I don't think we need that. I think all we need is just like a quiet space, being able to sit down, shut the fuck up, and just start breathing. I think that could be the start of it. And from there, I think it may open up various other horizons to us that we may not expect right now. But anyway, that's just like me talking from personal experience. And I really appreciate you, Neil, being here as always, brother. I always love having you on Break the Rules, and as well as Ammon and Ariel Pink, and this is a wonderful stream. And guys, listen, subscribe. Knock the hell out of that subscribe button right now. Click it right now, and make sure you click the bell. Now I've looked at the statistics. Not that many people click that bell. You always forget about that bell, so click it right now. And it's also very important to add a like. The like is very important, and share this to all of your friends, loved ones, cats, dogs, uncles, whatever. So that's it. Neil, what do you have coming up?
My next video that I'm going to be releasing is called The Greatest Gangster of All Time. And it's Sulla. Sulla was a general right in the end of the Roman Republic before Caesar came along. Actually, Caesar was alive during Sulla, and Sulla was on top of Caesar. Put it that way. Sulla was more powerful than Caesar was during the learning life. Caesar had to wait till Sulla was dead for him to actually rise up and become who he was.
Wait, didn't Sulla try to take shit over just like Caesar ended up?
He did take shit over. Are you kidding me? Sulla's the reason why Caesar was able to go and sweep with his armies and take over. Because Sulla did everything before Caesar did. So I'm doing a video of Sulla, and he ends his life, and this is why I'm titling it The Greatest Gangster of All Time. Because he just one day decided, you know what? I'm done being a military legend. I'm going to take my trillions of dollars, like equivalent, whatever, how much gold he had, and I'm just going to go retire off on an island. I'm going to take all the most beautiful musicians and women and prostitutes and playwrights, all the most famous celebrities of Rome at the time. I'm going to take them all with me. We're going to go on this island. I'm just going to live off my days here, and no one's going to fuck with me.
Was that Capri?
I don't know where the
different
island
was. Because I know that Tiberius had a similar thing going on for himself. Well, what about, question, what about Crassus? Because I recall Crassus is also pretty badass. He had his own private firefighters where when they...
Crassus worked for Sulla. He was under... He worked under. So when kind of like how when Alexander the Great died, all of his generals sort of like...
Ptolemy and all that,
Well, when Sulla died, you had Pompey the Great, Crassus, Caesar, Mark. They were all working under Sulla. Sulla won the civil war against Marius, and Marius was a big deal. So this leading up to Caesar there's a lot of shit that happened before Caesar, and Caesar kind of just comes along at the right time when all the stars were aligned for a great military king, whatever you want to call him. And so Sulla pretty much lays out the ground for him to do it, basically. That's kind of what I'm getting at in the video.
Did Caesar do any drugs?
Yes. Yeah. Everyone was. Anybody who was like rich and elite, you had access to anything.
Well, see, that's what I'm talking about. Access. We're living in an age where so many people have access to all kinds of stuff, and these are like people who were trained to be, like the best of the best, to have the stoic attitude, and they fell victim to it. That's all I'm saying. All I'm saying is that humanity is a very tricky thing where, if there is too much of an opportunity to lay down rather than stand up, you're going to lay down. But anyway, I mean, Neil, like you've been through, I think there was a lot of rare people like you out there who did manage to have a flirtation with a lot of these tempting things and were able to overcome that. And that, I think, that's fucking magical. That is amazing.
Yeah. I would say my love for ancient history and studying and doing independent studying filled a lot of that. As someone who was an addict, anyone who's an addict who's listening will know what I'm saying. There's that void, there's that that addiction void that you're always trying to fill with substances. Well, I kind of replaced it with my love for ancient history and mythology, making this channel. This is what I do now.
Yeah. And now you're growing a beard, and
Yeah.
you're gonna be like a wizard. So, guys, please follow Neil. Where can people find you?
Gnostic Informant.
Gnostic Informant, everybody. And don't forget, follow me on Twitter at Lev Po. Make sure to subscribe once again. And Patreon. I didn't show the Patreon once, so I'm going to show it right now. Patreon.com/breaktherules. Become a patron, and you are going to get these very beautiful magnets, which here they are. Look at the quality of these guys here. I'm going to put them on the front layer so you guys can see them in all their magnetic glory. My father created these very beautiful magnets, and they could be yours when you become a $20 and up subscriber to the Patreon. And if you become a $50 subscriber, you are going to get a custom magnet, meaning whatever design you want within reason, that is what you guys are going to get. So once again, that is patreon.com/breaktherules. Become a patron today, and I am going to be eternally grateful for that. And again, if you guys think like, oh, okay, they talked about religion today, that's pretty interesting, what else they got? We talk about it all. We talk about politics, we talk about culture, we talk about philosophy. And when I say we, I mean I bring on people who otherwise would have never had the chance to speak to each other right here on this platform, making it happen all the time. And we are going to have a lot of special people coming up. Mencius Moldbug, Curtis Yarvin is coming back in a couple of weeks. That should be very exciting. I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be, I think, his 4th appearance now. That's it. He's a BTR regular. There we go. So, guys, thank you so much for watching.